If you have people that are more advanced with technology, cut them loose. They need to start using AI in their day-to-day work. So if you have 30 staff members and all of them are using AI, now you have 60 staff members.
Mhm.
So think about it as a tool that you need to embrace. And if you're not going to do it, you might as well tap out and get out of the.
Welcome back to another episode of Built to Finish. Today's guest is a builder in one of the most operationally demanding and fragmented industries, where execution, consistency, and trust matter more than hype. He didn't just build a company, he built a system that runs with strong culture, low turnover, and a clear path towards stepping out of the day to day. At 62, he's still pushing physically and mentally, from walking millions of steps to rebuilding after knee replacements, proving that endurance isn't just something you train for, it's something you live. He is the founder of PCS Technologies, an MSP serving clients globally, including a strong focus on nonprofits and a leader who is actually designing his next phase. Dan Hernandez, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Stephen. Happy to be here.
No, it's great to be talking with you. And you just mentioned before we started recording that you're recently on a flight from Hawaii where your daughter ran the half marathon there.
Yes. A very proud weekend. My two daughters ran the half marathon on Maui, and there's nothing better to watch your kids perform in sports. It's just something I've enjoyed my entire life.
I completely agree. Watching, both of my daughters compete in dance while they were growing up was just such an incredibly, time consuming, but more importantly, just rewarding experience.
Yeah, they sent me a Father's Day card last year, and in my honor, they ran the Portland half marathon. Due to the fact that growing up, I encouraged them to be active, play sports, and I was a lifelong tennis player, played tennis for 50 years, and always ran, cycled, and always encouraged them to be active. So they ran their first half marathon in Portland last October, and my youngest daughter, Emily, just crushed it. She's a beast. She ran an hour, 50-minute a half marathon and took
Wow.
seventh in her age group. And I'm just very proud of both of them for performing so well.
That's really impressive. I was actually running the Brooklyn half marathon with my daughter's boyfriend on Sunday, and his father was in Hawaii running the full marathon.
Nice.
Oh, got a lot of relation to running this past weekend.
Right on. Yeah. Emily will run the full marathon in October in Portland. So I'm looking forward to that.
Very cool. Very cool. So a little bit slower than running, but tell me about this adventure you went on in terms of how many millions of steps did you commit to
Oh my
to
goodness.
to stepping?
In 2017, I had the pleasure of being at an IT boot camp in Nashville, Tennessee. One of my peers challenged me to walk 5 million steps. It was around the end of the year, and we were at a peer group conference, and Jack Daly, who's the ultimate sales entrepreneur, and he wrote a book, Life by Design, and I believe he's ran 50 marathons in 50 states. And
Okay.
one of my peers challenged me to walk 5 million steps, and he gave up after about a month, but I powered through and walked 5 million steps by the end of the year. And I think I hit my goal by middle of December in 2018. I went from 265 pounds down to 195.
Wow.
And I was in the best shape of my life, still playing a lot of tennis. And I was beating players I had never beaten in my career, my tennis career. So I was playing really good tennis. I was in the best shape of my life, and I was just enjoying hiking every trail around me.
Well, what was your methodology for achieving all of these steps? Did you walk a certain hour of the day, a certain amount per day, or was it just walking as much as possible whenever possible?
It was exactly that. I basically got up every morning, did about 2 or 3 miles first thing in the morning, and then when I bought lunch, while I was waiting for my lunch, I would walk around the block and constantly just moving throughout the day. And then at the end of my day, I'm an early morning guy, so I would get to the office early, try to get out by about 4 o'clock. And I live in San Francisco, and there is just gorgeous hikes all around me. So I would just go out and do the 4 or 5 mile hike
Not to
every
mention a lot of hills, so it's not just flat walking you did. You did a lot of hilly walking.
Oh my goodness. There was a lot of flights involved. There's no question. I can't do a hike without doing many flights. So that was one of the jokes because I had some peers in like Lafayette, Louisiana that did no flights at all. But yeah, a lot of hiking, a lot of beautiful walks. I had months where I did 16,000 steps for like, I think one month in April, I averaged 18,000 steps a day for the entire month. And it
Wow.
was just like an endurance venture. I just enjoyed it. My body was just the next level. And it was just, I thrived on just being sore every day.
I'm so happy you're mentioning this because a lot of people think that they need to do, marathons or ultra marathons or really intense events in order to get into great shape. And you're living proof that just a lot of walking is just as beneficial, probably more beneficial.
Well, after 50 years of tennis, and I played tennis in the San Francisco Tennis Club, which is one of the gorgeous indoor tennis clubs at the time. And playing indoor tennis is just really hard on your body. So I was struggling with knee pain for probably the last 10 years of my tennis career. And so running was kind of out of the question. And so walking, I just got into it. And I had friends that were like, "Oh, you're not really working out. You're just walking," until they saw the results. Once they saw the results and saw how I could move on the tennis court, and I would play some really top players, guys that played for UC Berkeley and things, and I would go forehand to forehand, and they just couldn't beat me. I could
Hmm.
I could just move better. I was just, I would not get tired.
Good for you.
So they couldn't wear me out on the tennis court.
Good for you. I've spoken to a lot of people that do a lot of steps, but you definitely take the cake by far. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, I did 2 years in a row, 2018, 2019. 2019 was a little harder. I think I finished on New Year's Eve. I was in Hawaii with my wife, and I was just getting up every day and dragging through like 20,000 steps a day to get to 5 million that year. No better place than to be in Hawaii. I think I did Diamond Head like 3 days in a row to reach my goal that year. Then it was a
Nice.
nice New Year's Eve to celebrate.
Very cool. Very cool. So switching over to business real quick. So you've built a sizable MSP. Without mentioning your revenue, you're in a higher percentile of annual revenue compared to the rest of the market, which, like I mentioned earlier, is highly fragmented. What's the one decision you made earlier on in building your company that really paid off in the long haul?
I believe in, I'm the ultimate entrepreneur. I learned from some brilliant people. Was blessed to watch a lot of great speakers throughout my career, people like Jesse Itzler and others. And I pay attention. I take tidbits, golden nuggets from every one of these talks, and I implement them throughout my life. And I was first to offshore to the Philippines. I was first to implement cybersecurity. I was first to implement compliance as a service in my peer groups, and I'm not afraid to take some chances and to grow the company. So I kind of take the strategy of practice, kind of what I did on in my sports throughout my life, preparing, practicing, just setting goals, I think, is what I really am good at. I used to prepare for the year like in November, December.
Hmm.
Now I prepare for my year and I start around September. So
Nice.
for 2026, I start preparing for 2026 in September of 2025. And I think that preparation, the planning, the setting the growth goals per quarter. So I live my life in 90 days. And
As does most of the corporate world.
setting those goals and setting those rocks, I think it was a big game changer for me,
Hmm.
and being able to break up the year into bite sizes that are manageable and just getting a lot more done than the average person.
Great. So you mentioned taking a lot of risks throughout your career. What's a risk that really stands out that didn't pay off?
Geez, there's many. I think,
As with every true entrepreneur, right?
maybe a couple bad hires early on. We didn't really have the true process in place for hiring. It was more of a gut feeling back in the day.
Hmm.
Now we have a true process for hiring, so we have less mistakes in that process. As you know, when you make a mistake in hiring, it's very expensive.
Yes.
I think early on, I made a big mistake with a hire around a role that we call a VCIO.
Hmm.
That, kind of cost me a lot over a couple years. So now we make less mistakes in hiring. I think we also probably missed a couple things in becoming a managed service provider. I think I should have become one a little bit earlier. I wish I would have kind of converted from break fix to managed services a couple years earlier. So in that lesson, I didn't miss becoming an expert in cybersecurity. I jumped on that very early, probably a couple years earlier than my peers. I also jumped on the AI bandwagon a couple years earlier than most.
Nice.
So I learned early on not to miss those big shifts in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I just finished talking about this with somebody else. Pattern recognition is really a superpower for entrepreneurs. You need to be really good to identify patterns and to jump on them sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. I probably re-engineered a PCS Technologies about 5 times. When I started this company, there was no internet or email, if you can imagine that. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, from the days of breaking and fixing computers. Well, you weren't breaking them, but offering break fix services to true modern day MSP. That's a long journey.
Absolutely. When I started out, we had a full page ad in Yellow Pages.
That's awesome. I recently found I was going through an old box and I found an ad that I had in the New York Times. It was actually my founder's brainchild. It said, "Don't read this if you're tired." So the headline was, "Don't read this." So obviously that caught somebody's attention, and the fine print was, "If you're tired of paying exorbitant consulting rates for your computer programmers," or something like that.
Yeah, it's fun when I go through and find old pictures and old ads and old marketing. I think we rebranded about 4 times over the years, and it's interesting to go back and look at what we did over the course of the last 37 years.
Yep, always is, always is. So you've done a really good job of making sure that the company isn't dependent on you personally. A lot of founders have a really hard time getting out of the day to day. What were the steps that you took, and like what advice would you give others that are, knee deep in the day to day operations and running of their business?
I hear it all the time from my peers, nobody's going to do it as well as I do, and all these different excuses. But, I have the mindset that if you make the right hires, I feel that most of the people on my team are smarter than I am. And that if you sit down and actually just have them shadow you, people on my team have sat through my sales meetings, have sat through my project meetings, they've watched me work time and time again. And then we do role playing. I sit on the calls with them and I have them run a meeting and I watch them work. I give them constructive feedback, and then I just cut them loose. And you got to trust that people are going to do the right thing. And here at PCS Technologies, one thing that we're really proud of is we have very little turnover on staff. And the reason why is that we are growing. We are a fast paced growing MSP, and that makes people stick around because they see that they have a career path and they have an ability to be elevated.
Hmm.
We have 3 awesome staff members. 2 are cyber heroes, and they were interns about 3 years ago. And after their first year, I could hear them chatting of, I can't wait to start training the next intern. They're excited to be elevated and to start sharing their experience with new people.
Hmm.
And that culture that we built is why I trust that I can step away and know that the security team has my back, that the service team is doing a good job, and when I show up and do what we call business security briefings every quarter with our clients, we ask how service is going. And early on, I no longer get complaints. I get
Nice.
great feedback about how awesome my team is. And I get shout outs of certain individuals. And, the process is working. and you have to let it go. Otherwise, you won't grow and you'll be stuck in the weeds.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Do you think there's a revenue level, or what other indicators should a founder look out for when he or she needs to say, you know what, it's time right now for me to step out of the weeds and to work on reducing the company's dependency on me?
I think early on it was a lifestyle business. I was able to put my $2 through school, buy a home. I made good money, and I could grow the business on my own, wearing many hats to about 1.5 to 1.8 million
Hmm.
with no marketing, referral based business. But to get beyond that, get over 3 million, something had to change. I needed more than referrals. I needed marketing. I needed to really focus on business development and get out of the service part of it. Stop building servers and, tearing apart server rooms and all that kind of fun stuff that I used to enjoy.
Right.
But at some point, it's just not fun anymore. You can only tear apart so many server rooms over your lifetime. And so I find more joy in having strategy conversations with my clients and earning trust and credibility with prospects that I do tearing apart server rooms. So I've grown as a person as well. So that growth has allowed me to get to the point where we have grown this company to the level we are today. And it's just a lot more fun. I love getting in front of people. I love sharing my experience, not only with cybersecurity and AI, but I love sharing my experience with my peers.
Hey everyone, just a quick break from the show to review the top three things that I talk to many founders about that are looking to maximize the valuation during an exit. One, are your books in order? Two, is there enough growth left in the business for the acquirer? And number three, what is your sizzle? What is that special sauce that's going to take many years for a competitor to recreate? If you have those three, you're definitely going to be maximizing your valuation upon exit. Now back to the show. Yep, I know. I totally get that. What KPIs do you look at on a weekly basis? What does your personal dashboard look like? And what advice would you give to others for information that is really important to monitor frequently?
We follow EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System, and it's been a major game changer. My integrator and my director of service are on my leadership team. They are at my level, and I trust that they are running projects, service, finance, all the other areas of the company very well. And so I look at, from my integrator, some key points on accounts receivable, profit and loss, revenue targets. From my service director, I look at some key areas on total labor dollars for the month and quarter, total hardware sales, and then also total number of open tickets and old tickets, just to know that service is doing their job. And then for myself, I track total and total number of first time appointments, sales appointments, and total number of business security briefings, so that I know I'm on track to hitting my numbers, which are better than best in class.
Okay.
I hold myself to a very high standard. So my rule of thumb, which I learned from Jack Daly, is 100% of sales activities 100% of the time. So I don't leave the office until I know I've checked every box on my list.
Okay. What does that look like for you these days? What are your hours? Are you putting a 40-hour week still or more?
Yeah, I put in right around 40 hours a week, and that does not include my visionary time, the 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. hours when I'm, walking and thinking about ideas that I record and share with my EA, or my evening time with some dinners with CEOs or gala events and things like that. So my core work hours is about 40 hours a week, and then there's a lot of extra effort that's put in by a CEO.
Sure. There always is, always is. So you focus the company mainly around nonprofits. How did you choose nonprofits as an area to specialize in?
We been around for 37 years. So we're about 50% for profit, 50% nonprofit. Our niche marketing is focused on nonprofits. I fell into the nonprofit world about 30 years ago by just working with some incredible organizations, some very large low income housing and other nonprofits that I gained a lot of experience working in. And I made a conscious decision to focus on the nonprofit space and just working in the community, supporting these organizations that do amazing work. I was also raised by a single mom and worked my entire life and I knew the struggles of, underserved communities. And so had a passion with that. Also, my youngest son, who's now 18 on the autism spectrum, who is doing awesome. He's full inclusion. He's going to graduate high school, go to college, and my wife has done an amazing job with him. So very proud of that. But in that journey, we got a lot of services. And so working with nonprofits that serve the community, serve underserved people and people that live with disabilities and all that's kind of near and dear to me. And so we now support 45 plus nonprofits around the Bay Area now across the country,
Nice.
from Meals on Wheels to the Arc of the East Bay to the San Francisco Giants Community Fund. And so it's just something we do with a passion, but I become an expert in knowing how nonprofits function. I served on the board for Telegraph Hill Neighborhood Center for 10 years, which is the oldest nonprofit in one of the oldest nonprofits in San Francisco, and served as their board president for 3 years and just gained a lot of experience. And, I was at Students Rising Above's gala about a month ago. And the best part of that event was talking to the students
Hmm.
and listening to their stories and the little bit of sponsorship that we can provide and raising our paddle for a little bit of funds and being able to support those kids is just something that we have the ability to do and to provide them IT support at a small discount that we are able to do is just something I'm very proud of.
Now that's amazing, and thank you for servicing the community from that perspective. It's a great service that is highly needed, and a lot of nonprofits go underserved, but you seem to be filling an incredible need.
Thank you. I got my corporate experience at Bain and Company many, many years ago and saw a need for corporate level IT expertise in the mid-sized business world. And so that's how I started PCS Technologies. Then on the nonprofit space, it was even worse. A lot of the nonprofits at the time were using volunteers and they were even lower down, really at a IT deficit where they really needed to improve their IT their technology in order to serve the community, to serve their mission. So to be able to bring them up to a higher level of technology so that they can better serve their mission was something that I was really able to do with my skills. People say, well, how do you make money serving nonprofits? Well, a lot of the nonprofits are well funded and can invest in technology. And then with my expertise and knowledge, we can actually help them with the technology skills to write grants to get more funds to be able to implement technology to serve their mission. So I have I'm blessed to have a lot of technical skills that were able to really support the nonprofits to be able to even better serve the community.
That's great. That is really, really great. So, several rapid fire questions for you. Favorite way to reset after a brutal day?
Play a little tennis, play pickleball, or go for a long walk.
Love it. Underrated business skill.
Communication,
One word your team would use to describe you.
driven,
Legacy. What do you want PCS to stand for?
world class IT company with a heart.
Last one. Biggest misconception about running a tech company.
That it's hard. It's actually fun. I enjoy my job every day. If I didn't love what I do, I wouldn't still be doing it after 37 years and over 40 years experience in IT. I learn something new every day. It's been, my one of my things is constantly learning.
Hmm.
So, from day one in the early 80s to today, I'm always learning technology and learning something new. And that's just something I just love.
I totally hear that, and I recently learned something new. I was so happy. On a flight back from San Francisco, I wrote an app using Claude, and I couldn't believe how easy it was. I'm going to launch it in the next couple of days or so, but it got me so happy to start doing something technical again. Actually, without writing a line of code, it was surreal.
It's pretty incredible. I've been playing with AI now a lot personally. I call it going to the AI gym where I put it on my calendar at least 3 to 4 days a week to spend 30 minutes to an hour a day learning all I can about AI. If you're not spending time learning about AI, you're going to be left behind. Think about it as having an AI employee,
Hmm.
and the more AI employees you can implement, the better.
So that's a great way to close. What advice would you give to folks that are really struggling in figuring out the best way to learn AI? Like what do you specifically do to learn more AI?
There's a couple tips I'm going to give you. One is have an AI policy in your organization where you're not going to let everybody sign up for every free AI tool out there. Pick a platform that you're going to roll out company wide, and then encourage everybody in your organization to start talking to AI. It's that simple. Whatever learning module you're utilizing, I've trained several learning modules to know who I am, what I do, that I'm the CEO of an MSP and how I like to work, how I think, and it's starting to spit out content that works for me. And then if you have people that are more advanced with technology, cut them loose. They need to start using AI in their day-to-day work. So if you have 30 staff members and all of them are using AI, now you have 60 staff members. So think about it as a tool that you need to embrace. And if you're not going to do it, you might as well tap out and get out of the business.
Great advice. Great advice. So please provide more information about your company and the services that you offer and the best way to contact you.
I'm Dan Hernandez, CEO of PCS Technology. You could reach me at dan at pcs-sf.com or now dan at pcstechnology.com. My website is pcstechnology.com. I'm always available for a conversation, and you could reach out to me. I'll do a 30-minute call and talk about IT technology anytime.
Awesome. Dan, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Stephen. This has been fun.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Built to Finish. If you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. It helps the show a lot. And I look forward to speaking with you on the next one. Take care, everybody. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services that help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.